January 8th, take one. Good morning, Old Farmer Wayne here with a couple of random thoughts. So, for the last few weeks, Donald Trump has been fantasizing about Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. Today, I want to discuss some quirks of Canada that might make him, or at least a prudent man, want to rethink this fantasy. In particular, I'd like to explore how the American political landscape might be affected if Canada were to become the 51st state. But first, I'm going to begin with an experience from 1959. In January of that year, my family, my parents, my younger sister, and I traveled to New Zealand by ship. We returned to Vancouver in late March with a stopover in Honolulu. I still remember stepping off the ship in Honolulu. The terminal was crowded. Many Hawaiians were handing out leis to visitors, which I understood to be a custom at that time. But just as many were holding banners and signs. I was too young to understand the situation, but as I look back now, I would liken this to an information picket line. There was nothing hostile about it. This group was advocating for Hawaii to become the 50th state. Now, crucial groundwork had already been laid when U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower had signed the Hawaii Statehood Act a few days earlier. Now it was up to Hawaiians to confirm their desires. In June, over 90% of Hawaiian voters turned out to vote 95% in favor of statehood. Their wish came true on August 21, 1959. Both this turnout and its overwhelming majority are significant in and of themselves. But the main takeaway from this is that the people of Hawaii wanted statehood. Now, Trump might think that Canadians would jump at the opportunity to become a U.S. state, and he would be the great liberator. Such fantasies don't seem uncommon amongst individuals with a hyperinflated sense of entitlement. Take, for example, Trump's Kremlin idol, who told the troops they would be greeted with cheers and flowers just before invading Ukraine. Almost 3 years later, the carnage continues. Trump probably envisions himself making a mission accomplished speech, but rather than on an aircraft carrier, it would be with mountains and a Canadian flag in the background. He's already rehearsed. Now, Canadians are aware of what's going on in the U.S. The grotesque foreign policy, toxic gun culture, never-ending battles over abortion, constant threats to Social Security, and, of course, an abominable healthcare system. Canadians are often critical of their own healthcare system, but they recognize it as vastly superior to the U.S. model. There's something that 40% of Americans have that few Canadians have even heard of. That's medical debt. In Canada, it's a foreign term. Yes, it's English, medical debt, but it's like a tropical disease, something acquired abroad. Trump is incorrect if he's dreaming that Canadians would want to join the U.S. Recent polls show 13%, barely one Canadian in 8, would like their country to become the 51st state, and that's probably counting Kevin O'Leary 500,000 times. You might think of Canadians as being more Ukrainian than Hawaiian. But what if Canada became the 51st state? What sort of representation would we have? When Alaska and Hawaii joined in 1959, they each got 2 senators, plus representation in the House of Representatives. Alaska got 1 representative, and Hawaii got 2. But the population of Canada is greater than that of California, the most populous U.S. state. California has 52 congressional districts. Canada could expect 54 to 57. Let's be conservative for the purposes of this discussion and say 54. This would raise membership in the House of Representatives to 489. And of course, Canada would get 2 senators. Or would it? Some people have speculated that Canada would become as many as 4 states. There could be as many as 8 senators. So now let's consider how this representation might affect U.S. elections. First, let's consider how Canadians might vote in the 2-party U.S. system. We might do this by considering some of the controversial issues mentioned above. Let's look more closely at abortion and health care. First, abortion. A whopping 10% of Canadians believe abortion should be illegal under any circumstances. In the U.S., 14% of Democrats say abortion should be illegal under all or most circumstances, while 57% of Republicans oppose it under all or most circumstances. I think it's fair to say Canadian values on this issue align more closely with Democrats. Now, how about health care? Again, the 10% figure pops up in Canada. This is the percentage of Canadians opposed to universal health care. Moreover, 80% fully endorse it, while another 10% are said to somewhat endorse it, which probably means they support a mixed system of public plus some private health care. In the U.S., support for universal health care amongst Democrats in 2020 was 54%, with another 33% supporting a mixed, while amongst Republicans, support for a single-payer system was 15%, with another 18% supporting a mixed system. Again, Canadian values align more closely with Democrat values. A similar alignment of values occurs with the issue of gun ownership, and I feel confident in assuming there would be similar sentiments on the issue of threats to old age security. I'll leave the issue of foreign policy because in the U.S., and to a lesser extent in Canada, foreign policy seems to operate irrespective of public sentiment. I think it's fair to say Canada would become a democratic, or to use terminology Americans like to use, a blue state. With it would come a block of 56 to 62 electoral college votes. Now let's look at some elections in the last couple of decades. I'll begin with presidential elections, but first want to discuss the popular vote. Because Canadian values align more closely with Democrat than Republican values, I'll focus on elections where Republicans were victorious, assuming the results would not be affected where Democrats were victorious. Including Canada in the 2024 presidential election would have brought a block of about 32.6 million potential new voters. We could have expected about 60%, or 19.5 million, to vote. And how would they have voted? Well, support for Trump in Canada was 21%, while Harris enjoyed 60%. I'll give some thought to the missing 19% in a later rant. Given the ratio here, 21 to 60, Trump would receive about 26%, or about 5 million votes, from Canada, while Harris would receive about 14 million, giving Harris a net 9 million gain in the popular vote. Trump received 77.3 million votes to Harris's 75 million in 2024. Add 5 million for Trump and 14 million for Harris, and Harris would win the popular vote 89 million to 82.3, a margin of 6.7 million, or almost 3 times the margin Trump won the popular vote by. But would Harris have won? The answer is no. Trump won the Electoral College vote 312 to 226, a margin of 84. Canada would have brought at most 62 Electoral College votes, not enough to flip the results. Likewise in 2016, Trump won with 304 to 227. However, of the 4 Republican presidential victories in the 21st century, this could have marked the third time the winner did not win the popular vote, which could conceivably put more pressure on abolishing the Electoral College vote in favor of determining the presidency by the popular vote. Now, George W. Bush would not have fared as well as Trump. Bush won the Electoral College vote in 2000, 271 to 267. Clearly, Canada could have changed the outcome in this election. Likewise, in 2004, when Bush won the Electoral College vote 286 to 252. 56 more Electoral College votes for the Democrats would have changed the result. This would have meant 24 years of continuous Democrat presidents. By the way, support for Bush in Canada was generally in the low 30s. Now, let's look at the Senate. When the incoming Senate takes office in January 2025, Republicans will hold a 53 to 47 majority. If Canada came in as a single state, the Canadian vote could not change these results. However, were Canada to enter as 4 states, the potential would be there. Next, let's consider the Senate following the 2014, 2016, and 2018 elections, a 6-year period where Republicans had continuous control. The Republican totals in these election cycles were 54, 52, and 53 respectively. As a single state, Canada would not have been able to swing the results in any of these election cycles. However, as 4 states, Canadian voters would have had the potential to flip the results in all 3 cycles. The probability of overturning the results would have been quite low. A 7-1 split in favor of Democrats in 2016 would have given them a clear majority. An 8-0 split in 2014 would have left a tied Senate, but Democrats would have held the vice presidential tiebreaker. And in 2018, an 8-0 split in favor of Democrats would have flipped the results. To reiterate, although the probability would have been low, having Canada join the 4 states, the potential would have been there. Next, let's consider the House of Representatives, where, since 1994, Republicans have held a majority in 12 of the 16 election cycles. But first, I'd like to discuss some aspects of how House elections might play out. First of all, the probability that Canada would elect 54 Democratic representatives to the House is next to nil. There are regions in Canada where the Republican brand would likely be quite strong. But it should be noted that when there is a disparity in the popular vote in a general election, the disparity is magnified in the results. To illustrate this, let's look at the results of the 2019 Alberta general election. The Conservatives garnered 56.8% of the popular vote, but took 72.4% of the seats. In other words, their share of the seats was significantly greater than their share of the popular vote. This was at the expense of the NDP, who, with 33.8% of the popular vote, won 27.5% of the seats, and the hapless Alberta Party, who, with 9.4% of the popular vote, were shut out. If the popular vote for representatives mirrored the support for respective presidential candidates, Republicans could fare quite badly, although it's extremely likely they would be shut out. Popular support across the country would not be homogeneous. I think the Canadian province that would be most likely to elect Republicans will be Alberta. Now, with about 12% of the Canadian population, Alberta could expect at most 7 congressional districts. But Alberta is not a monolith of conservatism. There's a strong progressive segment of the population, and these people are located in the concentrated population areas of Calgary and Edmonton. It would be hard to imagine the U.S. Republican Party, particularly in its current manifestation, taking more than 4 districts in Alberta on the best of days. On the other hand, consider Quebec. This province, with almost 20% of Canada's population, is strongly anti-gun and pro-choice on abortion. It's hard to imagine Quebecers electing a single Republican. Next, let's look at what it would take to flip control of the House of Representatives in the 12 election cycles where Republicans have held control in the last 16 election cycles. With 54 Canadian seats, the most recent election results, 2024, would surely have been flipped, and also the 2022 results. Similarly in 1998 and 2000. Similar results could have been plausible in 1994, 1996, 2002, 2004, and 2012. Only in 2014 could a Canadian vote not have swung the results. Plus, it would have been highly unlikely in 2010 and 2016. Donald Trump probably hasn't thought it through, but having Canada as the 51st state would likely relegate the Republican Party to the political wilderness. But why worry? He's already come up with new fantasies, like buying Greenland or expropriating the Panama Canal. But if he's determined to find a new state, the safer choice for Republicans might be Puerto Rico. I invite your comments. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. Know anybody who might like to see it? Please share. Bye for now.